The boardroom went silent when she walked in, not because they recognized Sarah Blackwood, but because every wolf in the room felt their inner beasts bow to a power that shouldn't exist. Cade Rivercrest's pen stopped mid-signature. His wolf stirred uneasily in his chest, whining like a kicked puppy. Around the mahogany table, his council members shifted in their seats, heads automatically lowering in submission to whoever this woman was. She wore power like other women wore perfume. The charcoal suit probably cost more than most pack members made in 6 months, tailored to a body that moved with predatory grace. Dark hair swept back in a ruthless bun. Heels that clicked against hardwood like a countdown. But it was her eyes that held him. Cold. Gray as winter steel. Familiar in a way that made his chest tight. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice smooth as aged whiskey. "Thank you for meeting with Blackwood Security Solutions. I'm Sarah Blackwood, CEO." The folder in Cade's hands slipped. Hit the table with a slap that echoed. No. Not possible. His counsel remained frozen. His beta, Marcus, looked between them with growing alarm. Even the lawyers they'd hired from the city seemed affected, though they were human and shouldn't have felt a damn thing. Sarah, because God help him, it was Sarah, didn't spare him a glance. She moved to the head of the table like she owned it, pulling out a chair his grandfather had commissioned. Sitting in it without permission. "Shall we begin?" She opened her own portfolio, and he caught a flash of an expensive watch. Diamond earrings. Everything about her screamed money and power and control. Everything he'd once told her she'd never have. "You're weak, Sarah. Wolfless. I can't tie myself to an Omega who can't even shift. The pack deserves better. I deserve better." His own words, spoken 5 years ago in front of 200 witnesses at the mating ceremony, came back like a fist to the gut. She'd stood there in the traditional white dress, the mate bond humming between them like electricity, and he'd ripped it apart. Rejected her in the oldest, cruelest way their kind knew. Because she couldn't shift. Because his father had just died and the pack was unstable, and taking a wolfless Omega as his Luna would have destroyed what little authority he had left. She'd been 22. Eyes shining with tears she refused to shed. She'd lifted her chin, God, he remembered that defiant chin, and walked out of the ceremony hall. Out of his territory. Out of his life. The pack had whispered for weeks. Poor thing. Humiliated. Broken. He'd told himself it was necessary. That he'd done the right thing for Silvermoon. That the hollow ache in his chest would fade. It never had. "Mr. Rivercrest?" Her voice cut through his memories. Those steel eyes finally landed on him, and there wasn't a flicker of recognition in them. "I assume you've reviewed our proposal?" Marcus kicked him under the table. Cade cleared his throat. Tried to pull his alpha mask back into place. Yes. Your company wants to purchase several properties within our territory." "Correct." She pulled out a map, spreading it across the table with elegant fingers. Red circles marked 6 locations along the northern border. Prime hunting grounds. Sacred spaces. My clients are willing to pay well above market value. The contracts are standard. Who are your clients? His voice came out rougher than intended. Her lips curved. Not quite a smile. That's confidential. This is pack land. He leaned forward, letting his alpha presence push into the room. Around the table, Wolf straightened. Submitted to the pressure. We don't sell to outsiders without knowing. I'm not an outsider. She didn't flinch. Didn't bow. His power rolled off her like water off stone. I was born in Silvermoon territory. My family bled for this pack for 3 generations. I have every legal right to purchase property here. Silence fell like a hammer. Marcus made a choking sound. Sarah? Hello, Marcus. Her tone thawed slightly for his beta. You're looking well. You're. Marcus gaped at her. What happened to you? I grew up. She turned back to Cade, and the ice returned. Now. About the properties. I'm prepared to offer. No. The word came out before he could stop it. His wolf snarled in his chest, finally recognizing their mate, howling at the severed bond that still ached like phantom limbs. You can't just come back here, Anne. And what? She stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Buy land that's legally available? Conduct business like any other corporation? I'm not asking for permission, Alpha Rivercrest. I'm offering you a transaction that benefits both parties. The formal title felt like a slap. Sarah. Ms. Blackwood. Her eyes flashed. We're not familiar anymore. His wolf whined. Paced. Begged him to reach for her, to explain, to fix what he'd broken 5 years ago. But Cade had learned to control his beast. He'd had to be the alpha his pack needed. Even if it killed something inside him. This is about revenge, he said quietly. Isn't it? She laughed. Actually laughed, and the sound was nothing like he remembered. Harder. Sharper. You think awfully highly of yourself if you believe I've spent 5 years plotting revenge. I barely think of you at all, Mr. Rivercrest. The lie was so smooth he almost believed it. Then why come back? Marcus asked, his voice gentle. Always the peacemaker. Sarah, if you wanted nothing to do with us. I wanted nothing to do with him. She pointed at Cade without looking at him. But I'm a businesswoman now. And business is business. These properties are perfect for my client's needs. The fact that they're in your territory is inconvenient. But not insurmountable. Cade's hands clenched into fists under the table. His wolf threw itself against his control, desperate and angry and confused. The mate bond, even severed and scarred, still connected them somehow. He could feel her power now, radiating off her in waves that made his instinct scream. That wasn't possible. Rejected mates didn't keep their bonds. And she'd been wolfless. You're different, he said. Yes. How? That's none of your business. Like hell it's not. He stood, matching her position. You couldn't shift 5 years ago. Now I can feel your wolf from across the room. That kind of power doesn't just appear. Her smile was all teeth. Doesn't it? And then she shifted. It happened so fast the humans didn't even blink. One moment, a woman in a designer suit. The next, a wolf that made every supernatural in the room drop to their knees. She was massive. Nearly the size of his alpha form. But it was her coat that stopped his heart, silver. Pure, shimmering silver like moonlight made flesh. The color of ancient alphas. The color that hadn't been seen in their kind for 200 years. His wolf whimpered. Bowed. Recognized power far beyond what any alpha should possess. Sarah, the wolf that was Sarah, turned those gray eyes on him. Held his gaze with an intelligence and fury that made his blood run cold. Then she shifted back, standing in her perfectly intact clothes like nothing had happened. Any other questions? She asked pleasantly. The door opened. Maya Thornhart walked in with coffee and a smile that died the moment she read the room. His fiancée. His chosen mate after Sarah left. A strong beta with the right connections and the right bloodline. Everything he'd told himself he needed. Maya's eyes darted between him and Sarah. Her wolf rose, sensing the tension, the challenge, the threat. Cade? Her voice was uncertain. What's going on? Sarah gathered her papers with calm efficiency. We seem to have reached an impasse. I'll give you 48 hours to consider my offer, Mr. Rivercrest. After that, I'll simply purchase the properties from the individual families who own them. I'm told several are having financial difficulties. It was a power play. A brilliant, vicious power play. She'd go around him, fragment his pack's holdings, and he couldn't legally stop her. You said you weren't here for revenge, he managed. She paused at the door. Finally let him see something real flash across her face. Rage. Pure, burning rage that had been 5 years in the making. I'm not here for revenge, Cade. His name on her lips felt like broken glass. I'm here for business. But if destroying you happens to be profitable? Her smile was beautiful and terrible. That's just good economics. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Maya stared at him. Who the hell was that? Cade sank back into his chair, his wolf still howling in his chest, the phantom bond aching like a fresh wound. My biggest mistake, he said. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. Cade hadn't slept in 3 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt it, the mate bond he'd severed 5 years ago, pulsing like a reopened wound. It shouldn't exist. Rejected bonds died. They withered and faded until nothing remained but scar tissue and regret. This wasn't withered. This was alive. It crawled under his skin like electricity, pulling him toward the north end of his territory where Sarah had taken a suite at the Crescent Hotel. Neutral ground. Technically not Pac land, though it sat right on the border like a deliberate insult. You look like hell, Marcus said, dropping a file on his desk. Cade didn't argue. His reflection in the office window showed a man coming apart at the seams, shadows under his eyes, jaw tight with tension, shoulders hunched like he was bracing for a blow that never came. Tell me you found something, he said. Marcus hesitated. That was answer enough. She's clean, Cade. Cleaner than clean. Blackwood Security Solutions is legitimate, contracts with half the supernatural councils in North America, annual revenue in the millions, reputation that's damn near spotless. He paused. On paper, she's everything you said she could never be. The words hit like claws to the gut. Cade opened the file anyway. Photos of Sarah at various events, supernatural galas, council meetings, territory negotiations. Always in control. Always untouchable. In one picture, she stood between 2 ancient vampire lords who looked at her with something close to respect. That shouldn't be possible. Vampires didn't respect wolves, and they certainly didn't respect young alphas who'd appeared out of nowhere with power they shouldn't have. Where did she go? He asked. After she left Silvermoon. That's where it gets weird. Marcus pulled out a map, spreading it across the desk. Her trail disappears for 3 years. No credit cards, no phone records, no sightings. Then she surfaces in Seattle with a new company and enough capital to make Wall Street jealous. 3 years. Cade's wolf stirred uneasily. That's a long time to be off-grid. There are rumors. Marcus looked uncomfortable. Some of the older wolves have been talking. They say she went to the Shadow Territories. The coffee in Cade's hands suddenly tasted like ash. The Shadow Territories. The place wolves whispered about in cautionary tales. A lawless stretch of land in northern Canada where the worst of their kind went, rogues, criminals, wolves too broken or too dangerous for pack life. Most who entered never came back. Those who did were changed in ways that made other wolves nervous. That's suicide, Cade said flatly. A wolfless Omega wouldn't last a week there. She wasn't wolfless when she came back. Marcus met his eyes. Question is, what the hell happened to her in those 3 years? Before Cade could answer, his phone buzzed. A message from the Supernatural Council. Mandatory territory dispute mediation. Tonight. Crescent Hotel. Attendance required. He showed Marcus, who swore softly. That's Sarah's hotel. Yeah. Cade grabbed his jacket. It is. The Crescent Hotel's conference room smelled like tension and expensive cologne. Cade arrived with Marcus and 2 of his best enforcers, only to find Sarah already there, sitting at a table with 3 other pack representatives. She wore black tonight, a fitted dress that probably cost more than his truck, hair loose around her shoulders in a way that made his wolf whine. She didn't look up when he entered. Alpha Rivercrest, the council mediator, greeted him. A vampire named Laurent who'd been settling territorial disputes since before Cade was born. Thank you for coming on such short notice. What's this about? Cade took a seat deliberately far from Sarah, trying to ignore the way the bond pulled taut between them. Ms. Blackwood's purchases have created some complications. Laurent steepled his fingers. Several packs are claiming she's violating territorial agreements. We're here to mediate before this becomes a larger issue. I violated nothing, Sarah said calmly, still reviewing papers in front of her. Every purchase was legal and properly documented. If these alphas can't manage their pack finances well enough to keep their land, that's hardly my problem. A massive alpha across the table surged to his feet. Thomas Ironwood, leader of the Red Claw pack. You're carving up territories like a scavenger, girl. Picking off the weak. The weak shouldn't be alphas. Sarah finally looked up, and her eyes were chips of ice. If you can't provide for your pack, step down. Let someone stronger take over. The room erupted. Cade's enforcers tensed. Marcus put a hand on his weapon. 3 different alphas were shouting, their wolves rising, power filling the air like ozone before a storm. And Sarah sat there, unmoved, like she was watching mildly interesting theater. Enough, Laurent commanded, his vampire authority pressing down on everyone. We will discuss this civilly, or... The windows exploded inward. Glass rained down in a deadly shower. Cade moved on instinct, throwing up a hand to shield his face as dark shapes poured through the broken windows. Rogues. At least a dozen of them, eyes wild with bloodlust, foam flecking their muzzles. An ambush. His wolf surged forward and he shifted mid-leap, clothes shredding as his alpha form burst free. Around him, others were shifting too, Marcus, the enforcers, the other alphas. The conference room became a war zone of fur and fangs and desperate combat. Cade ripped into the nearest rogue, tasting blood, his alpha instincts taking over. Protect the pack. Defend the territory. Eliminate the threat. Then he saw Sarah. She hadn't shifted. She stood in the center of the chaos in that black dress, and rogues were falling around her like puppets with cut strings. She moved like violence set to music, a broken bottle in one hand, a chair leg in the other, using human weapons with supernatural speed and precision. A rogue came at her from behind. Behind you. His wolf screamed it through the bond before he could stop himself. Sarah spun, drove the chair leg through the rogue's chest, and kicked the body away without breaking stride. Her eyes found his across the room, and for a heartbeat, the mate bond blazed between them so bright it hurt. Then she shifted. That silver wolf appeared in a flash of power that made every other wolf in the room stumble. She was magnificent, all deadly grace and ancient fury. She tore through rogues like they were nothing, working her way toward him with a combat instinct that felt familiar in a way that made his chest ache. They'd never fought together. He'd rejected her before they could complete the mating bond, before they could learn each other's rhythms in battle. But somehow, they moved in perfect sync. When he lunged left, she covered right. When she drove rogues toward him, he was already there to finish them. It was like fighting with someone he'd trained with for years, an alpha pair moving as one unit. It was beautiful and terrible and wrong because it should have been like this 5 years ago. A rogue alpha pushed through the chaos, bigger than the others, scarred and vicious. It went straight for Laurent, jaws wide, going for the kill that would throw the council into chaos. Stop. Cade's alpha command cracked through the air like thunder. Every wolf in the room froze. Marcus. His enforcers. The other alphas. Even the rogues stumbled, their eyes glazing with the force of his will. Every wolf except Sarah. She hit the rogue alpha mid-leap, silver fur flashing, and brought it down in a tangle of snarls and blood. They rolled across the floor, smashing through furniture, and when they stopped, Sarah's jaws were locked around the rogue's throat. The rogue alpha submitted with a whine. Sarah released him and shifted back, standing over the defeated wolf in her ruined dress, breathing hard but otherwise unharmed. The room was silent except for the sound of panting and dying rogues. Cade shifted back, staring at her. "You didn't obey the command." "No." Sarah wiped blood from her mouth with the back of her hand. "I didn't. That's not possible." Thomas Ironwood was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. "Only an alpha can resist an alpha command. Only an equal. Or a superior," Sarah finished softly. The implications hit like an avalanche. Cade took a step toward her, his wolf howling in confusion and recognition. "What are you?" Before she could answer, Maya burst through the door with backup from his pack. She took in the scene, the bodies, the blood, Cade standing there naked and staring at Sarah like she was the only person in the room. "Cade!" Maya rushed to him, pressing a blanket into his hands, her touch possessive. "Are you hurt?" "We got the alert." "I'm fine." He couldn't look away from Sarah. Maya followed his gaze. Her face hardened. "Of course she's here. She just saved the council mediator's life," Marcus said quietly. "Saved all of us, actually. How convenient." Maya's wolf rose in her eyes, responding to perceived threat. Another chance for her to show off her mysterious new power. Sarah gathered her things with that same maddening calm, like they hadn't just fought off an ambush of rogues. "The mediation is obviously postponed. I'll expect rescheduling within the week." "Wait," Cade called after her. "Sarah, we need to talk about." "We need to talk about nothing." She finally met his eyes, and the mate bond flared so bright between them that he felt it in his bones. Her expression didn't change. "You made your choice 5 years ago, Alpha Rivercrest. Live with it." She walked toward the door, stepping over bodies with her heels clicking against the floor. That's when Cade saw him, a man in the corner who definitely hadn't been there before. Tall, dark-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than a car. He was watching Sarah with an expression that was part amusement, part pride. "Miss Blackwood," the man said as she passed. His voice was smooth as silk and cold as winter. "The Shadow King sends his regards." Sarah paused. "Tell him I'm handling it. He has no doubt." The man's eyes flickered to Cade, and his smile was sharp enough to cut. "Though he wonders if you're getting distracted." "I never get distracted." Sarah's voice dropped to something deadly. "And remind him that I don't answer to him anymore. We had a deal. I kept my end." The man inclined his head and vanished, literally disappeared like smoke in the wind. Cade's blood ran cold. Who the hell was that? But Sarah was already gone, leaving behind only the scent of winter roses and power that made his alpha instinct scream warnings he didn't understand. "The Shadow King," Marcus said 2 hours later, back at the pack house. He'd pulled every resource they had, calling in favors from wolves who knew the darker corners of their world. "I've heard the name. Never thought he was real." "Who is he?" Cade demanded. "A legend. A nightmare." Marcus looked pale. "They say he rules the Shadow Territories. That he's older than any wolf has a right to be, and more powerful than any alpha alive. Wolves who go to his territory either die, serve him, or..." He trailed off. "Or what?" "Or earn their freedom by proving themselves worthy. By surviving trials that would break anyone else. By becoming something more than they were." Marcus met his eyes. "Cade, if Sarah spent 3 years in the Shadow Territories and came out with that kind of power, if the Shadow King himself sent her a message..." "She conquered them," Cade whispered, finally understanding. "She didn't just survive. She conquered the Shadow Territories. More than that." Marcus pulled up a grainy photo on his laptop. It showed a massive arena filled with wolves, and in the center, a silver wolf standing over a defeated opponent. This was taken 2 years ago. Underground fighting ring in the territories. The locals call that wolf the Silver Queen. Cade's chest tightened. That's her. Yeah. And according to the rumors, she won every fight for 18 months straight. Took down rogues, alphas, even challenged wolves twice her size. Marcus scrolled through more photos. They say the Shadow King himself took interest. Offered her a place in his court. But she refused. Said she had unfinished business. With me. The guilt was a living thing inside Cade's chest. She went through hell because I rejected her. Or she went through hell and became someone you couldn't reject, Marcus corrected quietly. Either way, she's not that broken Omega anymore. And I don't think she came back just for business, Cade. I think she came back to prove something. The door slammed open and Maya stormed in, her eyes wild. You need to see this. She threw down a folder. Inside were photos, surveillance shots from around the territory. In every one, Sarah was visible in the background. At the grocery store where pack members shopped. At the school where their pups learned. At the diner where his enforcers got breakfast. She's everywhere, Maya hissed. Watching us. Learning our routines. This isn't business, Cade. This is reconnaissance. She's planning something. Cade stared at the photos. In each one, Sarah looked different, softer, almost wistful. In one, she was watching a group of young wolves play in the park. In another, she stood outside the pack house, just looking. Like she was mourning something she'd lost. She's not planning an attack, he said slowly. She's... What? Maya demanded. Remembering. His wolf ached with understanding. She's remembering what it felt like to belong here. She doesn't belong here anymore. Maya's voice was sharp with something that sounded like fear. She gave up that right when she left. You chose me, Cade. Me. Not her. You're going to be mated to me in 3 weeks, and I won't let some ghost from your past ruin. Maya. He tried to gentle his tone and failed. This isn't. Don't. She backed away, tears in her eyes. Don't you dare tell me this isn't what I think it is. I can feel it, Cade. Every time she's near you, I can feel you pulling away from me. The mate bond we're trying to build, it's like there's something blocking it. Because there was. The severed bond with Sarah, which should have been dead, was still there, a ghost connection that refused to fade. I chose you, he said, but the words felt hollow even to his own ears. Did you? Maya's laugh was bitter. Or did you just choose what was convenient? What your pack expected? Because the way you look at her, Cade. You never looked at me like that. She left before he could respond, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Marcus cleared his throat. She's not wrong. I know. Cade slumped in his chair, suddenly exhausted. God, Marcus, what did I do? You made a choice. One you thought was right at the time. His beta's voice was carefully neutral. Question is, what are you going to do now? Cade looked at the photos of Sarah again. At the power radiating from her in every shot. At the silver wolf who'd fought beside him like they'd been born for it. At the mate he'd thrown away because she wasn't strong enough. Who'd become stronger than him? I don't know, he admitted. But I need to find out what she really wants. Why she came back. He stood, decision made. And I need to understand what the hell the Shadow King has to do with any of this. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Tomorrow night. Full moon. The old battleground. Come alone. S. His wolf howled in recognition, in longing, in regret. Marcus, he said quietly. Find out everything you can about the Shadow territories. Everything about the Shadow King and what kind of deals he makes. Why? Because if Sarah conquered that place, if she survived whatever hell she went through, Cade's jaw clenched. Then she's not here for business. She's not even here for revenge. Then what? Cade looked at the message again, at the invitation that felt like a challenge, a threat, and somehow a lifeline all at once. She's here to make me pay, he said. And I think I'm going to let her. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 3. 3 years ago, Shadow Territories. Sarah Blackwood was dying. She knew this with the clinical certainty of someone who'd already given up. The snow beneath her was stained red, her blood mixing with the gray slush like some twisted abstract art. Her body had been shutting down for 3 days now, ever since she'd crossed into the Shadow Territories with nothing but the clothes on her back and a death wish in her heart. The mate bond rejection had nearly killed her. Would have killed her, if she'd stayed in civilized wolf territory where everyone would have watched with pity as she wasted away. So she'd run. North, always north, until the safe lands gave way to wilderness that even rogues feared. At least here, she could die alone. Well, a voice said from somewhere above her. Male. Amused. This is dramatic. Sarah tried to lift her head and failed. Her wolf, the one that had finally emerged 2 days after Cade's rejection, like her body's last desperate attempt to survive, whimpered inside her chest. Too weak. Too late. Go away, she managed through cracked lips. Can't do that. Footsteps crunched through snow. A man crouched beside her, and even through her fading vision, she could see he was beautiful in the way dangerous things were. Dark hair shot through with silver. Eyes like molten gold. Power rolled off him in waves that made her dying wolf bow in instinct. You're on my land. That makes you my problem. Then kill me and solve it. His laugh was unexpected. Oh, I like you. What's your name, little wolf? Does it matter? Humor me. Sarah. She closed her eyes. Sarah Blackwood. Nobody. Nothing. Liar. His hand touched her forehead, and power surged through her, ancient and terrible and utterly foreign. You're burning with bloodline magic. Old magic. The kind that hasn't been seen in centuries. A pause. Someone rejected you. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. Yes. Fool, he murmured. You're bleeding royal blood into my snow, and he called you weak? Sarah's eyes snapped open. What? The man smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut. My name is Leakin. Some call me the Shadow King, though I find that title pretentious. And you, Sarah Blackwood, are about to become very interesting. I'm dying. Yes. He lifted her like she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest as he stood. But only because your human half is too weak to contain what you really are. The rejection broke open something inside you, something that was locked away, probably for generations. Your bloodline is trying to resurface, and it's killing you in the process. Hope was a cruel thing. Sarah tried to crush it. There's no cure for rejection. There is one. Leakin started walking, carrying her through snow that should have been impassable. But it's not a cure. It's a death and a rebirth. The trial of resurrection. Forbidden by every wolf council for the last 500 years because it's too dangerous, too unpredictable, and requires power most wolves don't possess. Why forbidden? His smile widened. Because it doesn't just save you. It makes you something more. Something the councils fear. Sarah's heart, which had been beating so slowly, stuttered with something like defiance. Tell me. The trial will kill your human half, the weak part that couldn't survive rejection. It will drag your wolf to the surface and force your bloodline to fully awaken. If you survive, you'll be stronger than any wolf born in the last 3 centuries. You'll be what your ancestors were before humans diluted the blood. He looked down at her, those gold eyes seeing too much. But most don't survive. And those who do, they're never the same. Good, Sarah whispered. I don't want to be the same. Leekin's expression shifted to something almost like respect. Then let's see what you're really made of, little queen. Present day. Sarah stared at her reflection in the hotel mirror, touching the silver streak that had appeared in her dark hair during the trial. A reminder. A badge. A warning. She died screaming in Leekin's arena, her human half burning away while her wolf clawed its way into dominance. 3 days of agony while ancient magic rewrote her DNA, unlocking a bloodline that traced back to the first wolves, the originals who'd walked the earth before packs and politics and weakness. When she'd finally woken, silver-furred and powerful, Leekin had been waiting. Welcome back, Your Majesty, he'd said, and she'd understood that everything had changed. Her phone buzzed. A message from the Supernatural Council. Power trial scheduled. 3 days. Crescent Arena. Attendance mandatory for all parties. She smiled at her reflection. Right on schedule. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. When she opened it, her assistant, a thin wolf named Derek who'd served Leekin before her, looked nervous. Ms. Blackwood. The council wants both you and Alpha Rivercrest for preliminary negotiations. They're calling it a formality, but it's a power play, Sarah finished. They want to see us in the same room, gauge the tension. Fine. Tell them I'll be there in an hour. Derek hesitated. There's something else. We've intercepted communications between Beta Maya Thornheart and a group of rogues. She's planning something for tonight's gala. Of course she was. Sarah had seen it coming for days, the desperation in Maya's eyes, the way she clung to Cade like he was slipping through her fingers. Let it happen, Sarah said. Ma'am? Maya needs to learn that I'm not the enemy. She is. Let her make her move. We'll handle it. Sarah's smile was cold. Sometimes the best way to defuse a threat is to let it blow up in someone's face. The council chambers were older than most modern cities, built deep under what humans thought was just another office building. Sarah descended the stairs with Derek at her side, feeling the weight of ancient magic pressing against her skin. Cade was already there. He stood with Marcus and 2 enforcers, looking like he hadn't slept since their last encounter. When their eyes met across the room, the mate bond flared to life between them, that ghost connection that should have been dead, pulsing with recognition and longing and regret. Sarah crushed the feeling ruthlessly. She'd learned control in the shadow territories. Had learned that emotions were weapons people used against you. Ms. Blackwood. Elder Marcus, no relation to Cade's Beta, greeted her with a respectful nod. The ancient vampire had been settling disputes for 300 years. Thank you for coming. Elder. She took her seat across from Cade, deliberately not looking at him. Let's make this quick. I have a gala to attend. Yes, the Supernatural Integration Gala. Elder Marcus smiled thinly. We're all invited, I believe. But first, we need to discuss the trial. Cade leaned forward. This is unnecessary. Sarah has legal right to purchase the properties. We don't need a power trial. The other alphas disagree, Elder Marcus said. They claim Ms. Blackwood is consolidating too much power, that she's a threat to pack stability. The only way to settle this is through traditional means. A dominance fight, Sarah said flatly. How medieval. How necessary, the elder corrected. You're operating on a level of power we haven't seen in generations, Ms. Blackwood. The councils need to know where you stand in the hierarchy. And the only way to prove that is through combat. Cade's wolf rumbled in his chest. If you're asking me to fight her. The trial is voluntary combat, Elder Marcus interrupted. To submission, not death. First to submit or surrender loses territorial rights. It's clean. It's traditional. And it will settle the matter once and for all. Sarah finally looked at Cade. really looked at him. He was beautiful in a rugged way, all hard edges and controlled power. The alpha who'd rejected her because she wasn't enough. Who was now being asked to fight her to prove she was too much. The irony was delicious. "I accept," she said. "Sarah," Cade started. "Alpha Rivercrest," she corrected coldly. "We're not familiar, remember?" His jaw clenched. "This is insane." "I won't." "Then forfeit." She stood, gathering her things. "Admit that I'm stronger. Give me the territorial rights without a fight. It would be easier for everyone. You know I can't do that." His voice was rough. "My pack." "Your pack will be fine either way," Sarah said. "This isn't about them. This is about you and me and a choice you made 5 years ago." She leaned forward, close enough to see the gold flecks in his eyes. "So let's finish it. 3 days. The arena. May the best wolf win." She left before he could respond, before the bond could pull her back toward him like gravity. 2 years ago, Shadow Territories. Again, Lekin commanded. Sarah struggled to her feet, her silver fur matted with blood and arena dirt. Across from her, a massive rogue alpha twice her size circled, waiting for another opening. She'd been fighting for 16 hours straight. This was her 20th opponent. "I can't," she gasped, shifting back to human form. Her body was covered in bruises and claw marks. "Then die." Lekin's voice was cold from his throne above the arena. "The trial of resurrection gave you power, but power means nothing without control. Without endurance. Without the will to keep fighting when everything in you wants to quit. What are you trying to prove?" Sarah demanded. "That you're worthy of what you've become." Lekin stood, his presence filling the arena like a physical force. "You're descended from the first wolves. Do you know what that means? Your ancestors didn't just lead packs, they ruled kingdoms. They were gods among our kind. And you want to give up after 20 fights?" The rogue alpha lunged. Sarah shifted mid-leap, her silver wolf meeting his brown one in midair. They hit the ground in a tangle of fangs and fury, and something inside her snapped, not broke, but unlocked. Ancient instinct flooded her consciousness. Battle knowledge passed down through blood, through generations of warriors who'd never known defeat. Her ancestors' memories, their power, their absolute refusal to submit. When the dust settled, Sarah stood over the defeated rogue, her jaws around his throat, her eyes blazing silver. "That's better," Lekin said with satisfaction. "Now." Again. She fought for another 4 hours. Defeated 6 more opponents. And when she finally collapsed, too exhausted to shift back, Lekin himself came down to the arena floor. "You're ready," he said, running a hand through her silver fur. "Not just to survive, little queen. To conquer." Present day, Integration Gala. The Crescent Hotel's ballroom glittered with supernatural politics disguised as elegance. Wolves mingled with vampires, Fae representatives negotiated with mage councils, and everyone pretended they weren't sizing each other up for weaknesses. Sarah arrived fashionably late in a gown the color of freshly spilled blood. Conversations stuttered when she entered. Wolves automatically lowered their heads, even alphas. Even those who didn't know who she was could feel the power rolling off her. She spotted Cade immediately. He stood near the bar with Maya plastered to his side, her hand possessive on his arm, her eyes tracking Sarah's every move. Sarah accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and deliberately turned her back on them. "Ms. Blackwood." A young alpha approached nervously. "I'm James Clearwater. I wanted to say, what you're doing, buying up territories and modernizing operations. Some of us think it's brilliant." "Thank you, Alpha Clearwater." Sarah smiled. Change is frightening to those who benefit from stagnation. The older alphas don't see it that way. The older alphas are dinosaurs waiting for extinction. She sipped her champagne. "The world is changing. We can evolve with it or die out. I know which I prefer. More young wolves gravitated toward her throughout the evening. She was careful with them, encouraging their ambitions, subtly undermining the old guard's authority. Building a coalition without seeming to. This was what Lekan had taught her. Power wasn't just about physical strength. It was about influence. Control. Making people want to follow you. She was so focused on her conversations that she almost missed the shift in the room's energy. Almost. Her wolf caught the scent first, rogues, mixing with the crowd. At least 6 of them, trying to blend in but failing. Their eyes were too wild, their movements too predatory. And all of them were watching her. Sarah's hand tightened on her champagne flute. She glanced toward Maya, who was whispering urgently to Cade, her face flushed. Ah. So that's how it was going to be. The first rogue made his move during a lull in the music. He lunged from behind, going for her throat, expecting an easy kill. Sarah moved. She spun, using the champagne flute like a weapon, smashing it across his face before he could touch her. He went down screaming, clutching his ruined eyes. The ballroom erupted into chaos. 5 more rogues charged her simultaneously. Sarah shifted, her silver wolf bursting free in a shower of red silk. She took down the first with a slash to the throat, the second with jaws clamped on his spine. Around her, pack wolves scrambled to respond, but she didn't need their help. The trial of resurrection had made her fast. Strong. And utterly ruthless. She fought like her ancestors had fought, with a brutal efficiency that left no room for mercy. These rogues had come to kill her. They would die for it. The last one finally went down, whimpering, with her paw on his throat. Sarah shifted back, standing naked and blood-covered in the center of the ballroom, breathing hard. Every wolf in the room was staring. The younger ones with awe. The older ones with fear. "Someone," she said calmly, "get me a robe." Derek appeared with one instantly. She wrapped it around herself, surveying the damage. 6 rogues, all dead or dying. No civilian casualties. Then she looked directly at Maya. The beta had gone white, backing away toward Cade, who'd shifted back and was staring at Sarah like he'd never seen her before. "Maya Thornhart," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "These rogues came here tonight because someone hired them. Someone who wanted me dead." Maya's face crumbled. "I didn't, I never meant." "You never meant for it to backfire this badly." Sarah walked toward her slowly, deliberately. "You thought they'd attack quietly. Maybe drag me outside where there were no witnesses. You didn't expect me to survive, much less win." "I'm sorry," Maya whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I can't lose him. I can't lose Cade to you." The ballroom was so quiet Sarah could hear her own heartbeat. She stopped directly in front of Maya, close enough that the beta flinched. "Keep him," Sarah said softly. The words fell like stones in still water. "I don't want broken things." Maya's sob was wrenching. Broken. An alpha who can't stand by his choices. Who rejected his true mate out of fear and now regrets it. Who's so torn between duty and desire that he'll let his beta make desperate plays like this. Sarah's eyes were cold. "You're welcome to him, Maya. But understand this, I didn't come back for Cade Rivercrest. I came back for me." She turned away, addressing the room. "The trial will proceed as scheduled. Anyone else who wants to challenge me is welcome to try. But know that I don't offer mercy twice." Sarah walked out of the ballroom with her head high, Derek and her security following. She didn't look back. Cade stood frozen as the ballroom erupted into whispered conversations. Broken. She'd called him broken. Not weak. Not unworthy. Broken. Like he was the damaged one. Like he was the one who wasn't enough. Cade. Maya's hand on his arm made him flinch. Cade, I'm sorry. I was just trying to. Go home, Maya. His voice was hollow. But. Go home. The alpha command in his voice made every wolf in the room wince. Maya fled, sobbing. Marcus approached carefully. Cade. We need to talk about what just happened. She killed 6 rogues without breaking a sweat. Cade was still staring at the bloodstains on the marble floor. In human form at first. Then shifted and... God, Marcus. Did you see how she moved? Yeah. His beta's voice was grim. Like violence given flesh. Like something out of legend. She's stronger than me. Cade finally looked at Marcus. Faster. More powerful. Everything I said she'd never be. Everything you made her become, Marcus corrected quietly. Cade, I don't think she went to the Shadow Territories by accident. I think she went there to prove something. To you. To herself. To everyone who said she was weak. She's descended from the first wolves. The pieces were clicking together in Cade's mind. That's what Lycan meant. The Shadow King found her because she was bleeding royal blood. He helped her unlock it. More than that. Marcus pulled out his phone, showing Cade a message. This just came through from our contact in the territories. Sarah didn't just train with Lycan. She challenged him for rule of the Shadow Territories. Cade's blood ran cold. What? 2 years ago. Fought him for 3 days straight. It ended in a draw, the only draw Lycan's ever accepted. He offered her joint rule. She refused. Said she had unfinished business. Marcus looked up. She's not just strong, Cade. She's Shadow King strong. She could have ruled the most dangerous wolf territory in existence, and she walked away. To come back here, Cade whispered. To face me. The mate bond, that phantom connection, pulsed with pain and regret and understanding. Sarah hadn't come back for revenge. She'd come back to prove she didn't need him. That she'd become everything he'd said she couldn't be, and more. That she was whole and powerful and complete without him. While he stood here, realizing he'd spent 5 years breaking himself over a choice he'd thought was right. I need to talk to her, Cade said. Before the trial. I need. Cade. Marcus gripped his shoulder. I don't think she wants to talk. I think she wants to fight. Then I'll fight her. Cade's jaw set with determination. 3 days. The arena. And maybe she'll finally let me apologize. Marcus looked doubtful but said nothing. Cade's phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. The battleground. Tomorrow night. Come alone. Last chance. S. His wolf howled with longing and dread. Tomorrow night, he'd finally face the truth he'd been running from for 5 years. That he'd rejected his true mate because he was afraid of being weak. And in doing so, had broken the strongest wolf he'd ever known. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 4. The Crescent Arena had been built by the first wolves 3 centuries ago, carved into living rock deep beneath the mountains. It was older than any pack, older than most of their laws, and it had witnessed more bloodshed than any battlefield. Today, it would witness history. Sarah stood in the preparation chamber, listening to the roar of the crowd above. Every major pack in North America had sent representatives. The council had turned what should have been a simple territorial dispute into a spectacle, a test of the old ways against the new. A test of who she'd become against who Cade had always been. Nervous? Derek asked, adjusting her ceremonial fight gear. Simple black combat clothes that would shred easily when she shifted. Traditional for trials. No. Sarah rolled her shoulders, feeling her wolf pace beneath her skin. focused. He's going to hold back. Derek had been with her long enough to read the situation. His wolf won't let him truly hurt you. The mate bond. The mate bond is a ghost. Sarah's voice was flat. He severed it. This is just an echo. It doesn't mean anything. But even as she said it, she felt the pull toward the arena above. Toward Cade. The connection that should have died 5 years ago instead thrummed with life, with recognition, with a longing that made her want to scream. She'd burned away her humanity in the trial of resurrection. Had cut out every weakness, every soft place where someone could hurt her. But the mate bond remained, a scar that wouldn't fade. A knock at the door made her tense. Ms. Blackwood, a council messenger said. It's time. Sarah took a breath and stepped into the corridor that would lead her to the arena. To Cade. To the moment she'd been building toward for 5 years. The crowd's roar intensified as she emerged into the arena proper. Wolves packed the stone seats, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. She could feel their attention like a physical weight, could sense the younger wolves' excitement and the older alpha's fear. She was a revolution they couldn't control. A power they didn't understand. And today, she would prove it. Cade entered from the opposite side. Even across the arena floor, she felt him. The mate bond flared bright enough to hurt, and her wolf whined despite her control. He looked exhausted, his eyes shadowed, his movements tight with tension. Good. Let him be afraid. Elder Marcus stood in the center of the arena, his vampire authority keeping the crowd's bloodlust in check. This trial is witnessed by the supernatural council and bound by ancient law. Combat to submission. First to surrender or fall unconscious loses all territorial claims. No outside interference. His eyes swept the crowd with warning. Any who break this law will answer to me. Sarah and Cade walked forward until they stood 10 feet apart. This close, she could see the pulse in his throat. The way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. The conflict written across every line of his body. Sarah, he said quietly. We don't have to do this. Yes, she replied. We do. I never wanted. What you wanted stopped mattering 5 years ago. Her eyes were chips of ice. Now shift, Alpha. Let's finish this. Elder Marcus raised his hand. Begin. They shifted simultaneously. Cade's alpha form was massive, all black fur and corded muscle, built for power and dominance. He'd been bred from generations of strong alphas, trained from birth to lead. But Sarah's silver wolf was something else entirely. Ancient power made flesh. The bloodline of the first wolves, undiluted and devastating. They circled each other, and the crowd went silent. Cade moved first, lunging with alpha speed. Sarah sidestepped, her smaller form more agile, and raked claws across his shoulder. First blood. The crowd gasped. They engaged again, a blur of fur and fangs. Sarah fought with the brutal efficiency Leakin had beaten into her, no wasted movement, no hesitation, no mercy. Every strike was calculated for maximum damage. But Cade was holding back. She could feel it in the way he pulled his attacks, left openings he shouldn't have left. His wolf was sabotaging him, refusing to truly hurt her despite his human mind's determination. Sarah snarled in frustration and pressed harder. She drove him back across the arena floor, her attacks relentless. Drew blood from his flank, his shoulder, his throat. Each wound was shallow. She wasn't trying to kill him, just force submission. But he wouldn't go down. Fight me. She shifted back long enough to scream the words. Stop holding back and fight me. Cade shifted back too, bleeding and breathing hard. I can't. Why not? Because you're my mate. The words exploded from him, echoing through the arena. Because every instinct I have is screaming at me to protect you, not hurt you. Because severing the bond didn't kill it, he broke off, chest heaving. God, Sarah. I can't do this. Then submit. She stalked toward him, naked and blood-covered and utterly unashamed. Admit you're weaker. Admit I won. Admit that you were wrong about me. I was wrong. His voice cracked. About everything. I was so wrong, and I've regretted it every day for 5 years, and I. The arena door opened. Everyone turned, including Sarah. A man walked in who shouldn't have been there, whose presence made Elder Marcus tense with alarm. He was tall, built like Cade but older, with silver threaded through dark hair and eyes that gleamed with ancient power. Sarah's breath caught. Lekan. The Shadow King smiled at her, then turned that smile on Cade. Hello, son. The arena erupted into chaos. Sarah stared at Lekan, then at Cade, her mind racing. Son. He'd said son. Cade had gone white. No. That's not, you can't be. Can't I? Lekan's voice carried easily over the crowd's shock. It's been 25 years, Cade. I suppose you wouldn't remember me. You were barely 3 when the council banished me. You died. Cade's voice was hollow. They told me you died. They told you what they needed you to believe. Lekan walked further into the arena, his power making wolves drop their heads in submission. They banished me for refusing to reject my mate, your mother. She was weak, you see. An Omega with a gentle heart and no killer instinct. The council said she destroy the Silvermoon Pack's strength. They demanded I reject her and take a stronger mate. Sarah felt like she'd been punched in the gut. I refused, Lekan continued. Fought the entire council for the right to keep her. Lost everything, my pack, my territory, my son. They exiled me to the Shadow Territories and told everyone I was dead. He looked at Cade with something like pity. And then you grew up and did exactly what they wanted. Rejected your weak mate to preserve pack strength. History repeating itself, except you succeeded where I failed. No. Cade was shaking his head. No, that's not, I didn't know. Does it matter? Lekan's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. You still did it. Made the same choice for the same reasons. Because you were terrified of becoming me, the alpha who loved too much and lost everything. Sarah felt her chest tighten. Pieces clicking into place. Cade's obsession with pack strength. His fear of appearing weak. The way he'd looked at her 5 years ago, not with hate, but with terror. She destroyed you, Cade whispered. Everyone said Mom destroyed you. That your love for her made you weak, made you lose the pack. She saved me, Lekan corrected. But yes, loving her cost me everything else. And you were raised on that story. Raised to fear that kind of weakness. To never let emotion override duty. He tilted his head. Tell me, son. Has it been worth it? The strength you preserved. The pack you protected. Was it worth losing her? Cade looked at Sarah, and his eyes were devastated. She should have felt triumphant. Should have reveled in his pain. Instead, she just felt empty. The trial, Elder Marcus said, trying to regain control. This interruption is necessary, Lekan interrupted. Because they both need to understand what they're really fighting for. He turned to Sarah. Little Queen. Do you know what you're asking him to admit? That I was worth keeping, Sarah said quietly. That I was enough. No. Lekan's smile was sad. You're asking him to admit he was his father's son. That he made a choice out of fear, not wisdom. That he hurt you to avoid becoming me. He paused. But here's what neither of you understand. You're both broken. Both destroyed by the same history, the same fears, the same impossible choices. I'm not broken. Sarah's voice was ice. I conquered the Shadow Territories. I became everything he said I couldn't be. Yes. And it cost you everything else. Lycan's eyes were knowing. The trial of resurrection gave you power, but it took your ability to be vulnerable. To accept weakness. To complete a mate bond without burning yourself out. The arena went silent. What? Cade's voice was barely audible. Tell him, Lycan said to Sarah. Tell him what the trial really cost. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. She didn't want to say it. Didn't want to admit the price she'd paid for strength. But Lycan was waiting, and the entire supernatural world was watching, and the truth was going to come out anyway. The trial of resurrection burned away my humanity, she said. Each word felt like broken glass. Made me stronger. Faster. More powerful. But it changed my wolf's nature. Made me incapable of submitting. Of accepting vulnerability. She finally looked at Cade. I can never complete a mate bond. The trial made me too strong. If I tried to bond with anyone now, the conflict between submission and dominance would tear me apart from the inside. Kill me within days. Cade made a sound like he'd been stabbed. So you see, Lycan continued, she came back not for revenge. Not for business. But to prove to herself that she could face you and feel nothing. That she'd burned away every weak part of herself, including the piece that still wanted you. He looked between them. The question is, did it work? Sarah wanted to say yes. Wanted to be cold and untouchable. But the mate bond was screaming at her, and Cade looked shattered, and the truth was she'd spent 5 years becoming strong enough to face him only to realize that strength couldn't fill the hollow place in her chest. I asked you to fight me, she said to Cade. To show me you could see me as an equal. But you won't. You can't. Even now, you're holding back. Because I love you, Cade said simply. The words fell like stones. I loved you 5 years ago, and I was too much of a coward to keep you. I let fear and duty and my father's ghost make my choices. I rejected you because I was terrified of losing everything the way he did. Of being weak. Of failing my pack. His voice broke. But all I did was lose you anyway. And spend every day since regretting it. Love isn't enough. Sarah's eyes burned. I needed you to think I was worth the risk. Worth the fear. Worth keeping despite everything. You were. Cade dropped to his knees in the center of the arena, bowing his head in ultimate submission. You were always enough, Sarah. I was the one who wasn't. I was the one who was too weak to choose you over everything else. The crowd gasped. An alpha, submitting in trial. Sarah stared at him, her wolf howling in confusion. This wasn't victory. This was something else. Something that felt like grief and vindication and heartbreak all twisted together. Was I ever enough? She asked, the question she'd carried for 5 years finally escaping. Not what I could become. Not what I proved I was. Just me. The Omega who couldn't shift. The girl who loved you. Was she ever enough? Cade looked up at her with tears streaming down his face. Yes, he whispered. God, yes. You were everything. And I destroyed us because I was too afraid to believe it. Sarah felt something crack in her chest. The armor she'd built so carefully, starting to fracture. I win, she said softly. The trial. I win. Yes. I proved I'm stronger. Yes. I proved you were wrong about me. Yes. Cade's voice was wrecked. You proved everything. You're magnificent, Sarah. You're everything I was too blind to see. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The apology she'd wanted for 5 years. It felt like ash in her mouth. Because what did it matter now? She'd won the trial. Won the territories. Proved her strength. But she'd lost the ability to ever complete the bond that still connected them like phantom limbs. She'd traded one kind of brokenness for another. This trial is concluded, Elder Marcus said into the silence. Sarah Blackwood is victorious. The territorial rights. Wait. A voice from the crowd. Maya Thornhart stood, her face pale but defiant. Before this ends, everyone should know the truth. Cade's beta, Marcus, tried to stop her. Maya, don't. He deserves to know. Maya's hands were shaking, but she kept talking. I manipulated him. For years. Fed his fears about weak mates. Reminded him constantly about his father's failure. I wanted to be Luna, and I knew the only way to get it was to make sure Cade never looked at Sarah the way he should have. The arena went deadly quiet. At the mating ceremony, Maya continued, her voice breaking, when Cade was hesitating, when I could see him wavering. I told him his mother had just been hospitalized. That the stress of seeing him made a wolfless Omega had brought on a heart attack. It wasn't true. She was fine. But he believed me, and he rejected Sarah to protect his mother from the shame. Cade rose slowly, his face drained of all color. What did you just say? I lied. Maya was crying now. I lied because I wanted you. Because I thought if Sarah was gone, you'd eventually see me. But you never did. You spent 5 years mourning her, and I spent 5 years watching you love a ghost. She looked at Sarah. I hired those rogues at the gala. I wanted you dead because you're the only thing standing between me and the life I thought I deserved. The pack members who'd attended were growling, their eyes flashing with rage. To manipulate an alpha's choice. To lie about pack family. To hire rogues to attack within their territory. These were crimes punishable by exile. Or worse. Marcus, Cade said quietly. Escort Maya from the arena. Call an emergency pack council. She's to be tried for treason. Cade, Maya reached for him. Don't. His voice was cold as winter. Don't touch me. Don't speak to me. You manipulated me into destroying the most important thing in my life. You used my fears and my mother's name to make me a liar and a coward. He looked at her with such contempt that she flinched. Get out of my territory. If I see you again, I won't be responsible for what my wolf does. Marcus and 2 enforcers dragged Maya away as she screamed apologies that no one wanted to hear. The crowd erupted into chaos, wolves shouting, demanding justice, calling for blood. But Sarah only had eyes for Cade. He stood in the center of the arena, broken and bleeding and finally seeing the truth of what he'd done. What they'd both lost. I didn't know, he said hoarsely. About Maya. About the lies. God, Sarah, if I'd known. Would it have changed anything? She asked. If you'd known Maya was manipulating you, would you have kept me? Or would you have found another excuse? Another reason why an Omega wasn't good enough for an Alpha? He flinched. I don't know. I want to say yes, but I was so afraid. So convinced that love was weakness. It is, Sarah said. And that's what I learned in the Shadow Territories. Love is the ultimate weakness. It's the soft place where people hurt you. So I burned it out. Did you? Leekin asked from where he stood watching. Or are you lying to yourself, little queen? Sarah looked at her mentor, at Cade's father, she realized with a start. The Shadow King who'd saved her life and taught her to be strong. You knew, she said. You knew he was Cade's father when you found me. That's why you helped me. Yes. Leekin's smile was gentle. I saw my son's mistake written in your dying eyes. Saw history repeating itself. And I thought, perhaps this time, the story could have a different ending. What ending? Sarah's voice cracked. I'm too strong to ever complete a mate bond. He's too broken to ever forgive himself. Maya's been manipulating everything from the start. What kind of ending is this? An honest one, Leekin said. Where both of you finally stop lying. Stop pretending you don't need each other. Stop believing that strength means being alone. I can't bond with him. Sarah's hands clenched. The trial made it impossible. If I tried. You'd die, Lekin agreed. Unless you found a way to balance strength and vulnerability. To be powerful without being impenetrable. To love without losing yourself. He looked at Cade. And you'd need to become worthy of that trust. To prove you could handle loving someone strong without fearing it would destroy you. How? Cade asked desperately. How do I prove that? By letting her go, Lekin said simply. By accepting the trial results. By giving her the territories and your respect and everything she won. By proving that you can love her without possessing her. Without needing to control her or protect her or save her. He smiled. By letting her be exactly what she became, a queen who doesn't need a king. Sarah felt tears burning her eyes for the first time in years. And if I do that? Cade's voice was barely a whisper. If I let her go, prove I can love her without holding her back, then what? Then maybe, Lekin said, she'll choose you anyway. Not because she needs you. But because she wants you. Because love doesn't have to be weakness, it can be strength, if you're brave enough to share it. He turned and walked toward the arena exit, leaving them alone in the center of the blood-stained floor with thousands of witnesses and a bond that refused to die. I'm sorry, Cade said. For everything. For being too weak to choose you. For making you think you weren't enough. For all of it. Sarah looked at him, really looked at him. Saw the alpha who'd broken her heart and the man who'd broken himself trying to do what he thought was right. I can't forgive you, she said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I know. But I can accept your submission. Take the territories. Build something new here. She paused. And maybe, someday, we can figure out what comes next. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was honest. And after 5 years of lies, honesty was enough. The trial is concluded, Elder Marcus repeated. Sarah Blackwood is victorious. The crowd roared its approval, the younger wolves celebrating, the older ones still processing what they'd witnessed. Sarah shifted back to human form and let Derek wrap a robe around her shoulders. As she walked toward the exit, she felt Cade's eyes on her back. Felt the mate bond pulse with longing and regret and something that might have been hope. But she didn't look back. She'd spent 5 years learning to be strong. Now she had to learn something harder, how to be strong and vulnerable at the same time. How to be a queen who could still be loved. And whether the alpha who'd broken her could ever be worthy of putting her back together. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 5. The penthouse suite in the Crescent Hotel should have felt like victory. Sarah stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching dawn break over territory that was now legally hers. The northern lands. The sacred hunting grounds. Everything she'd fought for, bled for, won. It felt hollow. The contracts are finalized, Derek said from behind her, his voice carefully neutral. The council confirmed the transfer last night. Half of Silvermoon's territory now belongs to Blackwood Security Solutions. Good. Sarah didn't turn around. What about the families who were in financial trouble? We've offered them generous terms to stay on their land. Most have accepted. Derek paused. You're being hailed as a revolutionary. The younger wolves are calling you the Silver Queen. There's talk of other packs wanting to modernize, to follow your model. And the older alphas? Terrified. A hint of satisfaction in his voice. As they should be. Sarah closed her eyes. This was what she'd wanted. Power. Respect. Fear. Everything Cade had said she'd never have. So why did it feel like she'd lost something more important than she'd gained? Ms. Blackwood, Derek said carefully. There's something else. Alpha Rivercrest has called an emergency pack meeting. That got her attention. She turned. When? Now. He's live streaming it to all Supernatural channels. Everyone's watching. Sarah's wolf stirred uneasily. Show me. Derek pulled up the feed on his tablet. The screen showed the Silvermoon pack gathered in their ceremonial grounds, hundreds of wolves, all watching their alpha stand before them. Cade looked like he hadn't slept. But his voice was steady as he spoke. 5 years ago, I made a choice that I believed was right for this pack. I rejected my true mate because I thought she was weak. Because I was taught that love was a vulnerability we couldn't afford. Because I was afraid of becoming my father, an alpha who lost everything for his mate. The crowd was silent, riveted. I was wrong, Cade continued. Not just about Sarah Blackwood, who proved she's stronger than any alpha in this territory. But about what makes a pack strong. About what leadership really means. He took a breath. I've spent 5 years trying to be the alpha you needed. Building strength through fear and duty and control. And all I built was a cage, for you, and for myself. Sarah's chest tightened. My sister, Elena Rivercrest, has been my beta in all but name for 3 years. She's smart, strategic, and she leads without the fear that's crippled my judgment. She should have been alpha long ago. Cade's eyes were clear. So effective immediately, I'm stepping down. Elena will lead Silvermoon from this day forward. The crowd erupted into shocked murmurs. As for me, Cade said, I'm going to do something I should have done 5 years ago. I'm going to prove that I can change. That I can become worthy of the mate I rejected. That I can be strong enough to love without destroying. He looked directly into the camera, and Sarah knew he was looking at her. Even if it kills me. The feed cut off. Sarah stared at the blank screen, her heart pounding. He's abdicating, Derek said quietly. For you. He's being an idiot. Sarah's hands clenched. Giving up his pack won't change anything. Won't make me capable of bonding with him. Won't erase 5 years of. Ms. Blackwood. Derek's voice was careful. Where do you think he's going? Sarah's blood ran cold. No. He wouldn't. The Shadow Territories are calling it in their networks. An alpha without a pack, requesting entry. Requesting an audience with the Shadow King. Derek met her eyes. He's going to ask for the trial. That's suicide. Sarah was already moving, grabbing her keys, her phone. The trial of resurrection has a 70% mortality rate. He hasn't been conditioned for it, hasn't spent years preparing. He's doing it for you, Derek said simply. To prove he can be your equal. To find the loophole in your curse. Sarah stopped, her mind racing. The loophole. She thought about it, late at night when the mate bond ached and she let herself remember what it felt like to be loved. If she couldn't bond with someone weaker than her, if the conflict between dominance and submission would tear her apart, then the only solution was to bond with an equal. Someone who'd undergone the same trial. The same transformation. Someone strong enough to match her. He'll die, she whispered. Probably, Derek agreed. But he's going to try anyway. Sarah looked at him, this wolf who'd served the Shadow King before serving her. How long do I have? The trial takes 3 days. He left 6 hours ago. If you drive straight through. Derek pulled up a map. You might reach the territories before he enters the ceremonial pool. Sarah grabbed her jacket. Get me a car. The fastest one we have. Already waiting downstairs. Derek smiled slightly. I had a feeling you'd go after him. I'm not going after him, Sarah snapped. I'm going to stop him from throwing his life away over some misguided attempt at redemption. Of course, Ms. Blackwood. It's not romantic. It's stupid and reckless, Anne. You're wasting time, Derek said gently. Sarah ran. The drive to the Shadow Territories took 18 hours. Sarah pushed the car to its limits, racing through forests and mountains and wilderness that grew progressively darker the further north she went. This was the land beyond pack law, beyond civilization, where the rules that governed the rest of their world meant nothing. Where wolves went to die or become something else entirely. She'd made this journey once before, broken and dying, with nothing to lose. Now she was making it with everything to lose, and the irony wasn't lost on her. The boundary marker appeared as the sun set on the second day. A pile of stones that marked the edge of claimed territory and the beginning of the Shadow King's domain. Sarah crossed it without hesitation. Wolves appeared from the darkness almost immediately. Rogues and outcasts, their eyes gleaming in the twilight. But they recognized her, the Silver Queen who'd conquered their arena, and bowed their heads as she passed. The ceremonial grounds were deep in the heart of the territory, carved into a canyon that never saw full sunlight. Sarah had fought here dozens of times, spilled blood on these stones, proven herself worthy of Leekin's training. Now she ran toward it with her heart in her throat. The ceremonial pool was ancient, fed by underground springs that carried magic as much as water. Steam rose from its surface, and the air around it shimmered with power. Cade was already in it. He floated in the center of the pool, naked and unconscious, his body racked with convulsions. Black veins spread across his skin like poison, the trial's magic burning away his humanity, forcing his wolf to the surface in the most brutal way possible. He was dying. "You're too late," Leekin said from the edge of the pool. The Shadow King watched his son with an expression that was equal parts pride and sorrow. "He's been in for 6 hours. The transformation has already begun." Sarah dropped to her knees at the pool's edge. "Pull him out. Stop it. I can't. Once the trial begins, it must run its course. He survives, or he doesn't. He's not ready." Sarah's hands were shaking. "You know he's not ready. He hasn't spent years conditioning his body, preparing his wolf. This will kill him." "Probably," Leekin agreed. But he knew that when he asked for it. Sarah watched Cade convulse again, watched blood seep from his eyes and mouth as the trial tore him apart from the inside. The mate bond was screaming at her, pulling her toward him, begging her to save him. "There's a loophole," she said desperately. "There has to be. You always leave loopholes." Leekin smiled slightly. "Smart girl. Yes, there's one way to save him. But it requires something you've spent 5 years refusing to give anyone." "What?" "Vulnerability." Leekin crouched beside her. "The trial is breaking him because he's trying to do it alone, with only his own strength to sustain him. But the first wolves didn't transform alone. They did it in pairs, mates who shared their power, balanced each other's weakness with their strength." Sarah's breath caught. "You want me to go in with him?" "I want you to choose him," Leekin corrected. "To offer your own life force to balance his. To make yourself vulnerable when everything in you is screaming to stay safe and separate." His eyes were knowing. "The trial burned away your ability to submit. But it didn't burn away your ability to share. To be equal partners instead of dominant and submissive. If I go in there, you'll both either survive or die together. The trial will forge you into true equals. Twin alphas, bound by choice rather than fate. Or it will destroy you both." Leekin's voice softened. "But you'll have chosen each other. That's the only way to break the curse you've been carrying." Sarah looked at Cade, convulsing in the pool. At the alpha who'd broken her heart and then broken himself trying to fix it. She should let him die. Should walk away and stay safe and powerful and alone. But the mate bond was howling, and she was so tired of being strong by herself, and maybe, just maybe, true strength was knowing when to share it. "How do I do it?" she asked. Leekin's smile was proud. "Strip down. Enter the pool. Take his hand. And don't let go, no matter what happens." Sarah stood and shed her clothes with trembling hands. The pool's surface looked like liquid silver in the darkness, steam rising like spirits. She'd done this once before, alone and dying, with nothing but rage to sustain her. Now she was doing it with everything to lose. Sarah stepped into the water. It was cold as ice and hot as fire simultaneously, magic burning against her skin. She waded deeper, feeling the trial's power recognize her, pull at her, trying to drag her under. She reached Cade in the center of the pool. His eyes were open but unseeing, his body rigid with pain. The black veins had spread across his entire torso, and his wolf was clawing to get free, trapped between transformation and destruction. "Cade," Sarah said, taking his hand. "I'm here." His fingers spasmed, closing around hers with desperate strength. The trial hit them both like lightning. Sarah screamed as power surged through their joined hands, the trial's magic recognizing them as a pair, as mates, as two halves of something that should have always been whole. It tore through her carefully constructed walls, dragged up every emotion she'd buried, every weakness she'd burned away. And it was agony. She felt Cade's pain as her own, felt him dying, felt his wolf being ripped apart and rebuilt. But she also felt his determination. His love. His absolute refusal to give up on them even when it would be easier to let go. "I'm sorry," his thoughts whispered through the bond that was suddenly blazing between them. "I'm so sorry for everything." "Shut up," Sarah thought back, gripping his hand tighter. "Save your strength. We're both surviving this, or we're both dying. But we're doing it together." The trial accepted their choice. Magic poured through them, reshaping them, transforming them. Sarah felt her power shift, not weaken, but balance. Felt the rigid dominance that had defined her since the first trial soften into something more flexible. Something that could be strong and vulnerable simultaneously. And she felt Cade's power growing to match hers. His wolf, which had been so carefully controlled, so desperate to submit to her, was being rebuilt into something fiercer. Something that could stand beside her as an equal rather than bow before her as lesser. Twin alphas. The phrase echoed through the magic between them, ancient and powerful. A bond not of dominance and submission but of partnership and choice. The trial burned for 3 days. They stayed locked together in the pool, hands joined, consciousness flickering in and out. Leekin watched over them, keeping the other wolves away, making sure no one interrupted the transformation. When Sarah finally opened her eyes, the sun was rising. She was lying on the stone beside the pool, wrapped in furs. Cade lay beside her, breathing steadily, his skin unmarked except for a silver streak in his hair that matched hers. They'd survived. "Welcome back," Leekin said, offering her water. "Both of you." Sarah sat up slowly, feeling her body hum with power. Different than before. Not stronger, exactly, but more complete. Like she'd been carrying half a song for 5 years and finally found the harmony. Beside her, Cade stirred and opened his eyes. They were different too. Silver flecked with gold, ancient and powerful. The eyes of a first wolf. "Sarah?" His voice was hoarse. "Still alive," she managed. "Both of us. Somehow." Cade sat up, staring at his hands. At the silver marks that now traced his forearms, mate marks that matched the ones blooming on Sarah's skin. "We're bonded," he whispered. "Not bonded," Leekin corrected, looking pleased. "Paired. There's a difference. Bonded mates have dominant and submissive roles. Paired mates are equals in every way, power, strength, authority. You're the first twin alphas in 500 years. Sarah felt the connection between them, solid and real. Not the ghost bond that had tormented them for years, but something new. Something chosen. "Why?" she asked Leekin. "Why set this up? Why help us?" "Because you're my son," Leekin said to Cade. "And you made the same mistake I did, choosing duty over love. But unlike me, you got a second chance." He looked at Sarah. "And because you reminded me what it means to fight for what you want." To be broken and still choose to become stronger. This was your plan all along, Sarah realized. Finding me. Training me. Making me powerful enough that Cade would have to change to match me. Not my plan, Lekin said with a smile. Fate's plan. I just facilitated. Cade stood on unsteady legs and offered Sarah his hand. She took it. The bond between them flared with recognition, with completion, with a rightness that made her chest ache. I'm still angry at you, she said. I know. I don't forgive you for rejecting me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I choose you anyway. The words came out rough. Because being powerful and alone was worse than being powerful together. Because you were willing to die to prove you could change. Because, her voice broke. Because I never stopped loving you, even when I hated you. Cade pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I came back powerful to prove you wrong, he whispered. But you made yourself powerful to prove you were wrong. To prove that loving you wouldn't destroy me, it would complete me. They stood there, two wolves who'd been broken and rebuilt, finally understanding that strength wasn't about being invulnerable. It was about choosing who you'd be vulnerable with. 6 months later. The coronation was held in neutral territory, the ancient grounds where the first wolves had once gathered, before packs and territories and politics divided their kind. Every major pack in North America attended. The Supernatural Council. Representatives from vampire covens and fae courts and mage circles. All come to witness history. The crowning of twin alphas. Sarah stood on the ceremonial platform in traditional white, not a wedding dress this time, but battle regalia embroidered with silver wolves. Cade stood beside her in matching black, his hand warm in hers. Below them, their combined pack gathered. Silvermoon and Shadow territories, merged under joint rule. It had been a chaotic 6 months of negotiation and restructuring, but they'd built something new. Something stronger than either territory had been alone. Elder Marcus stepped forward to officiate, his vampire authority lending weight to the ceremony. We gather to recognize a new era, he said, his voice carrying across the crowd. Not of dominance and submission, but of partnership and equality. Not of tradition that divides us, but of change that makes us stronger. He turned to Sarah. Sarah Blackwood. Silver Queen. Conqueror of the Shadow territories. Do you accept the responsibility of leading this pack as alpha, not above your mate, but beside him? I do, Sarah said clearly. And will you use your power not to dominate, but to protect? Not to control, but to guide? I will. Elder Marcus turned to Cade. Cade Rivercrest. Alpha heir of Silvermoon. Do you accept the responsibility of leading this pack as alpha, not beneath your mate, but beside her? I do, Cade said. And will you lead with strength and vulnerability? With power and compassion? With the wisdom to know that true strength comes from partnership? I will. The elder smiled. Then by the authority granted me by the Supernatural Council, I recognize you as twin alphas. May you lead your pack into a new era. May your bond be a beacon for others. May your strength never come from standing alone, but from standing together. He placed a ceremonial crown on each of their heads, simple silver circlets that caught the afternoon light. The crowd roared its approval. Sarah looked at Cade, this alpha who'd broken her and then broken himself to rebuild them both. Who'd died and been reborn so they could be equals. Who stood beside her now, not as her savior or her subordinate, but as her partner. I came back powerful to prove you wrong, she whispered, so only he could hear. But you made yourself powerful to prove you were wrong, Cade finished, his eyes bright. That loving me wouldn't make you weak. That sharing strength doesn't mean losing it. We're both idiots, Sarah said. Matching idiots. Cade smiled. Twin idiots. Alpha idiots, she corrected. The most powerful idiots in wolf history, he agreed. They kissed as their pack howled approval, as the mate bond, no, the pair bond, blazed between them like summer lightning. Then they shifted together. Two silver wolves, identical in power and grace, standing side by side. The crowd gasped. Even Leekin, watching from the edge of the ceremony grounds, looked impressed. Twin alphas in wolf form. Something that hadn't been seen since the first wolves walked the earth. Sarah and Cade raised their heads and howled together, a harmony that spoke of partnership and power and a future that belonged to wolves brave enough to change. Their pack joined in, hundreds of voices rising in song. The sound carried across the territories, a declaration that the old ways were dying and something new was being born. Two wolves who'd been broken by tradition, rebuilt by trial, and paired by choice. Leading their pack into an era where strength came not from standing alone, but from knowing who was worth standing beside. Sarah looked at Cade through her wolf's eyes, feeling the bond between them pulse with life and love and equal power. Ready? She thought through their connection. Always, he replied. And together, the twin alphas led their pack into the future. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily and also, to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.